Hey, everybody, welcome to the Zeal movement bass lesson. And tonight we're going to be looking at how to practice and prepare for a new song, perhaps one that you haven't checked out before. And I'm just going to kind of go through my process of like how I would do it, and hopefully we can pick up a few things from that. So let me just dive straight into it. We look at like a broad overview idea firstly. So firstly, look at the song in a whole. Um, and then we'll break it down into the smaller sections and we'll talk about charts and stuff like that. So firstly, broad overview. Um, the first thing that I do when first approaching a song is to listen to the song. Okay, obvious, isn't it? All right. So firstly, the song that we're going to check out tonight is a song by Leland, and it's a song you probably know quite well. It's called Lion and the Lamb. So if you're not familiar with it, please do check it out. Lion and the Lamb by Leland. And that's the song we're going to be using as our little example for tonight's lesson. So the first thing I will do is I'll put the song on and I'll have a listen to it. Okay, it sounds pretty rudimentary, pretty simple. But what you want to do is you actually want to familiarize yourself with the song to the point that you kind of understand the basic form, intro, verse, chorus, second verse, like another chorus, maybe a tag bar or something like that, a bridge section, another chorus. You'll find that a lot of songs tend to follow a common form, and the more you do this, the more that kind of will just get ingrained in your system, and you start to hear it a lot better and start to understand it a lot better. But yeah, I think whenever learning a song, the way I like to do it, I play a lot by ear as well. So I like to really familiarize myself with like every part of the song. Okay. And I'm probably jumping ahead, but what I like to do is actually be able to get to a point where I'm able to sing the bass line and then also sing the melody of the song. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'll listen to the song a lot so that you become familiar with the structure and the form. Second thing I'm going to do is to learn the melody until you're able to sing the verse or the chorus without the backing track. So for example, singing in the shower. Even if you don't have a great voice, even if you're not the vocalist in the group, in the band, everyone can sing to some degree, and it's more about just making that connection. See, music for me is a physical, tangible kind of thing, and I find it very helpful to yes, be able to think of the melody in my head, but actually to be able to reiterate it physically. So to be able to sing the melody for me is very important. I also like to be able to sing the bass line. I like to be able to sing the drum groove, if there's a drum intro, like doof, 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 dish, etc. Okay. I like to learn how to sing any guitar lines that might be involved in the song. Any of these kind of important moments in the song, it's really helpful to be able to sing them because it makes a connection, at least for me, with the brain, and it becomes a physical, tactile thing. Playing the instrument is a physical thing. And that's another reason why I like to rely on the old paper and pen method. I do use iPads Live. I'm sure a lot of you do. And I've got an app on there that allows me to upload these charts that I write out and then to make notes on the iPad. So if I'm using an iPad Live, chances are what's actually on the screen of the iPad is going to be something along the lines of that. I don't know how well you can see that. There's my chart. So yeah, all right. So we talked about the melody. Learn the melody. Make sure you're able to sing it without the backing track, without the chords, just to have that melody so ingrained in your mind. The melody is very important for a few different reasons. And if you're in the congregation quite often on a Sunday, it's probably, something that's already in your mind. You probably know the melody very well, from singing it week after week. If it's a new song, it takes a little bit more time to familiarize yourself, and then you really need to just spend some time with it. The melody is the most important part of the song for me. The melody will help to outline the changes. So I'm talking about chord changes, and it will also give you clues as to the form, what's coming next, that type of thing. So it's really important to learn the melody of the song, learn the melodies for each of the little sections. Then what I like to do is I like to try and isolate the bass part. Okay, so there's numerous ways to do that. there's a few of these sort of online platforms that will let you strip the song down to hear the individual elements. Okay, and a great one for that is multitracks, but there's a lot of others available as well. And that allows you to actually solo the bass on the recording and listen to what was actually played on the recording. So many times in studios, people spend hours and hours trying to come up with a part that suits the song in the way that they think is the most effective, so people have put a lot of work into these parts, and it's the same as if you're learning any sort of classical instrument, for example, violin or something like that. You're going to learn a part that's already been written and been performed numerous times. You learn a lot as a musician, even if you are playing by ear. You learn a lot from actually analyzing the parts that have been played on previous recordings, and so that's a great place to start. They're often well thought out, and it's usually a great starting point. Okay, you can also learn some new techniques. You can learn some new lines. Maybe you can learn some little tricks from the recording. I always try to pull out one or two things that maybe I'm not familiar with. Maybe they're playing the song in a different area on the bass that I haven't, used very often. So that kind of thing is really useful when you're trying to kind of learn new tricks and techniques from the actual recordings. So what I like to do is I like to put on something like multitracks, solo the bass, and then just listen to exactly what they played. And this is very time consuming, and I'm not saying everyone should do this, but what I do like to do is I actually I'll go into like Sibelius or something, and I'll literally write out the part note for note. But that's just my own personal thing, and it just helps me to kind of get it in my mind. And it's just a cool exercise for me to do. So quite often I'll write out the bass line for the whole song, but exactly as it's played. But I'm not saying that's like the way to learn a new song. That just helps me a little bit. It might help you as well if you're familiar with Sibelius or scoring kind of softwares and stuff like that. MuseScore is another great one that's freely available. All right, so software is available for writing charts, but personally, like I like to do it with the old pen and paper method. And again, it's because of that tactile connection between the brain and the hand as you're writing it out. It just does something for me that I found very useful. Okay. Number 4, identify any parts that you might not be so familiar with or that you might find quite difficult to play. Okay. And make sure that you're able to sing them without playing them. Okay. So that's really important for me. Slow it down if you can, really analyze those little lines, or maybe it's just an intro, even if it's a guitar line or something for guitar players. But for a bass player, if it's a certain line or a certain little lick that they maybe use to set up a chorus or a bridge section or something like that, might be quite tricky. So you need to just familiarize yourself with those parts to the point that you can actually sing them without playing. And that, for me, I found very, very useful. Number 5, try to sing all the other parts in the song: drum grooves, bass lines, guitar lines, keyboard parts, like anything that really stands out. Make sure you're familiar with all those different parts, because when you're playing with the band, even if they're not playing the exact arrangement, it just it helps to kind of maybe generate ideas. Or maybe there's something that, like, oh, we don't have a lead guitarist today, but there's something you can do on the bass that will kind of fill in where the guitarist would normally take the big line or something like that. It's useful to know all the different parts of the puzzle so that you can bring them together in a very musical way. So familiarize yourself with all the parts, and obviously the bass as well. Okay. So moving on, the next thing I like to do is to get into the world of charts. Okay. We talked about this just a little bit before. Often charts will be given, to worship teams or to bands in the form of like a lyric chart. It's got the lyrics and it's got the chords above, and you can see, okay, on this specific word, I'll play that particular chord, which is great if you're the singer, and that really does kind of form that connection. But as other musicians in the band, we can learn a lot from professional musicians who play a lot of corporate gigs and that kind of thing. I mean, how they approach these type of things. And basically, as musicians, it's not enough just to know, okay, I got to play this particular chord in that particular word, because what happens in between the words, what happens in the spaces in between the verses and the choruses, and what's happening on the third bar of the second verse, for example, these kind of things are really important to know, especially as a bass player, because it's crucially important when you're playing bass that you're very familiar with the form of the song. So I find that's the most important thing as a bass player. You can't be just behind the beat. You can't be just behind the changes, because the bass drives the band forward. The bass pushes the band. And as such, it's really important to familiarize yourself with the form of the song. Okay, so write out step number one for me when it comes to writing charts. Write out the basic form of the chart at the top of the page, so I'll just write, okay, it's got an intro, then there's verse one, as you're listening to it, just put the song on once. As you go through the sections, just make a note, okay, that was the intro. Next thing, verse one, chorus one, verse two, chorus two. Oh, a tag bar that was 2 bars long, maybe make a note of that. A bridge section, then they build, and big chorus at the end, and little outro section, something like that, for example. Okay, so that's what I like to do. Is first and foremost, I write out the basic form, so I kind of have a handwritten idea of the different sections of the song as they are on the recording. When you get to rehearsal and the musical director says, okay guys, today we're going to do the first verse, and then we're going to do the first verse again, and then again, and then again, just make notes on your chart as you go, according to whatever you're going to be doing on the Sunday. But it's a good starting point is to map out the recording first. Okay. Then I like to write out any helpful information at the top of the page. So I don't know how well you can see this. I'll just switch across here quickly. This is my chart. Just this little exercise before I started this lesson this evening. I put on the song and I thought, well, what would I do if I was learning the song for the first time? I've played the song before, but as an exercise for the first time, let me just write out, as I'm hearing it. And you actually learn stuff that you never thought of before when you do that kind of thing. But here's my little chart. So it's very hard to see, and I know it's a little bit blurry. I probably need a better camera. But at the top here, the title of the song, line in the lamb. Then I've got the key, okay, B major. After that, I've got the tempo. It's 90 BPM, this particular song. All right, so that kind of information lives at the top of the page. The title, the key, the tempo, and then any other stuff. Like, for example, I play a lot of songs in a different tuning, or not tuning, but just in drop D. So, if you want that lower extension for certain things, maybe for those who like more advanced and just looking for other options and other sort of ideas to expand the palette a little bit, it's a cool trick. But if I'm going to be playing the song in drop D, then I will make a note on the top of the page, drop D, because how many times you start a song and you realize, ooh, I'm in the wrong tuning. Okay. Then let's move on. Then what I like to do after that is to write out any helpful information. Okay. For example, tone. Okay. If the chorus and the recording, if they're using a lot of bass distortion, for example, then I'll definitely make notes of that. That's going to be on the chart as well. If the song is a pick, or whether it's to be played with fingers, okay, whether you're using a pick or whether you're using fingers, really important. It's crucial tone information, for guitarists, capo markings, that kind of stuff, it's really important. So just write that helpful information top of the page, and then before you start, okay, this song, it's time to bring out the pick, or this song, it's time to hit that distortion pedal, or this time, it's time to play in drop D, whatever it is. Then what I like to do, so that's kind of my broad overview. Moving on from there, I like to find a way where we can actually write out the song on kind of more of a macro level. So kind of zooming into certain sections. Okay, so now what I'm going to do on my chart here is I'm going to write out, I've written here intro, you probably can't see this, but intro, and then I'm drawing bar lines. So I've got vertical bar lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that gives me the 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then what I will do is I'll take the the lyric chart that we've been given with the chords and that kind of thing, and I'll actually map it out in these bars. Okay, so I've written 4 bars along the top here. I've labeled it intro. I've put over here in brackets riff, because that's a guitar riff. As soon as I hear the guitar riff, it's just another clue, a little bit useful. Also, I've written here don't repeat on the second repeat. Okay, so when we come back to the beginning of the song, play the intro, but this particular one doesn't repeat on, once it only repeats in the beginning. So I just made a note of that as well. All right, so I got the 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. Inside there, I've written the chords for each one, except I didn't do it in the intro for some reason, but here it is. If you look at the verse, they've written the chords B, C sharp minor 7, goes to E again. So in each bar, this particular song has the changes basically like per bar, which is pretty easy to map out. If there may be 2 or 3 changes per bar, try and gauge them. If there's a change towards the end of the bar, maybe on the 4th beat or the 3rd beat, you can even put little markings along the top to know where your beats are coming in, and you're going to be changing on beat 3 or the and of 4. Kind of just gauge it. This is just a rough handwritten chart. Normally I'll write, okay, we're going to go to B. If it changes to C sharp minor 7 before the 2nd bar, then I'll just write the C sharp minor 7 in there just before the bar line. So I know, okay, at the end of that bar, we're changing to C sharp minor 7. You'll hear it with the band. And if you really need to write exactly where it comes in, because maybe it comes in a weird place, maybe it's not in the and of 3, or maybe it's something like that. So then just make a little note above. And that's why I like to leave 2 lines for my charts and not just leave it all in 1 line. If you're using a piece of paper that's got lines already on it. All right, so that's just kind of the way that I do it. So yeah, number 1, I will draw the bar lines first. So map out the song. Okay, the intro, 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. The verse, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's it. Okay, then we go into the chorus section. The chorus section is a little bit more complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, which is weird. So basically, what we actually end up there is we actually end up with 20 bars, and I just didn't put the repeats in, which I probably still need to do. Repeat sign, just 2 lines, 2 little dots. Okay, and then you can repeat that little section. If you want to, you can just write ×2 at the top. Okay, I do that for some sections, like the bridge on this song in particular. I just wrote ×3 because you'll play it through 3 times, and then you'll have another section that repeats and repeats and repeats. And it's up to the musical director and the way the band are feeling and the worship leader and those kind of people to determine at the rehearsal, like how many times are we going to build this thing. Sometimes it's up to just the way that the song ends up going on a Sunday morning or a Sunday evening, as to how many times you're gonna repeat it. But have a rough goal in mind and write it down on the chart. Okay, so first thing I do, add the bar lines, break up the song, and if you really want to, you can write the lyrics in as well. But I tend to not do that so much unless there's a key phrase that's very important that I need to listen out for, and then I'll make a note of those lyrics just above on the chart. Okay, so double bar lines mark the end of a section. So after the verse, I've got a double bar line. Okay, same with the intro, same with the chorus, and it just helps to map it out for you. Then write out the chords roughly where they fall inside the bar lines, and then what I also like to do is I would like to write out the chord numbers, because how many times have you got to rehearsal and somebody says, oh, play the 5 chord, then 4, and then 1 or something. And you're thinking, okay, I know B, I know C sharp minor 7, I know E, but numbers. So that's talking about the Nashville number system, which I'm sure is something that's going to be covered in future. But the Nashville number system, you can Google it if you want to. It's a really interesting and really easy way, actually, of just keeping track of the chords of the song, so that if you decide, okay, cool, this song's not really working in B major, let's try it in C. Then what do? Then you sit and transcribe all the chords again to be in C. If you assign a number to each chord, like, for example, we're in the key of B, the first chord is a B. So if you assign number 1 to that chord, and you can just put a little 1 above or below, but I'll just put a 1, and I'm going to use a capital Roman numeral for a number 1 instead of the number 1. I'm going to use a capital Roman numeral, and that's just like a standard in music. What we use capital letters to show that particular chord is a major chord. And so there's a capital Roman numerals, the big I, and we'll use small Roman numerals, so lowercase Roman numerals, to show that the chord is a minor chord. Okay, so major chords are capital Roman numerals, minor chords are the lowercase Roman numerals. Okay, so yeah, that's just like a very brief, just touching on the Nashville number system for those who are interested. But yeah, it is really useful if you're writing out these charts to, write 1, 2 is the next chord, C sharp minor 7, and then it goes to E, and you just count it. So we're in the key of B. If B is 1, and C sharp minor 7 is going to be the next chord in the scale. In the chord of B major, in the key of B major rather, what we're going to look at is we're going to start on the B major scale. Okay, so if you're just playing a B major scale, play that just so that you're all can. So just B, C sharp, then it goes to E flat, E, F sharp, A flat, and that's it. Okay, so then a B flat again, and B. All right. So well, except it wouldn't be B flat, it'd be A sharp, yeah, minor. All right. So yeah, if you just look at the scale, counting the notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back on the B again. Okay, so sorry, that was a bit confusing anyway. So my point is play the root scale of the key that you're in. Okay, so we're in the key of B, we play B major. All right, and that way you can work out B is chord number 1. The next chord in the scale, so C sharp, is going to be chord number 2. And there's certain patterns that you'll learn when you look into music theory a little bit deeper, where you'll start to understand that that there's certain patterns involved. For example, in just a normal major key, the first chord is always major, the second one's always minor, the third one's also minor, and the fourth and fifth ones are both major, and the sixth chord in that scale is going to be minor. The seventh chord is going to be diminished, which is even more complicated, so just ignore that, but think along the lines of sort of flat 5s and those kind of sounds. Also minor though, flat 3 as well. And then we're going to end up back where we started on the 8, which is also the 1, which is also B. Okay, so we're going back to, so just touching on that as well, but it can be really useful, especially when you're like changing keys and that kind of thing. All right, then the last thing I like to do when I'm writing out charts is I like to write out sort of any difficult parts or any key phrases that are really important. Like say, for example, like there's a bass line, everybody knows it. It's really important to the song, it's crucially important. Maybe it's an intro, maybe it's just a little section in the bridge or something like that. But, what you want to do is you want to kind of facilitate the worship as much as possible. And if people are familiar with a certain part, from listening to just recorded versions of songs, they'll be familiar with it. If you play it on a Sunday, it helps them to kind of just engage a little bit better with the songs. If you're playing parts that they're kind of familiar with. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I'm just saying it's helpful, but it's something to bear in mind as well. So if there are any difficult parts or difficult phrases that you're not 100% sure about, you can write them out. If you're happy with writing, the staff notation, you can write, you can write the actual notes on the chart. Otherwise, just write, which sort of frets you're going to be playing, and on which strings, or you can write out maybe some little tabs just in the middle of the chart. That's the beauty of using paper, is you can just quickly, draw the 4 strings on the bass and write, okay, I'm going to play, if it's a B, I'm going to play on the A string, number 2, then I'm going to play number 4. Okay, then I'm going to, et cetera, that kind of thing. So write out the line. You don't have to write the rhythms and stuff, but at least it gives you a clue. When you're busy playing, maybe you're not so familiar with the song. As soon as you hit that section, you can just see a little cheat sheet there and okay, cool, I'm going to play that line. And hopefully you're familiar with it to the point that you're able to sing it. And it just makes it much easier then to make that connection with, reading the line or hearing the line and if you're able to sing it, it makes it much easier to then transfer that to the fingers to be able to play the line. Okay. So yeah, again, just a very useful thing that I use all the time. When we get down to the actual playing part of the song, this is the last part of my practice. So if we recap once more, we started off with a broad overview, just getting the basic form, learning to sing the melody, learning to sing the bass line, learning to sing the other parts. Okay, then we went on to the charts. You write the basic form, get a blank piece of paper and you draw the bars. And as you go writing out the chords in each bar, any extra information, that kind of thing. Okay. And that also gives you, a glimpse of the whole song in its entirety in terms of where the verse comes and then the chorus and then the second verse and then the second chorus and then there's a tag for 2 bars and then there's a bridge for 4 bars and it goes back to another 2-bar tag and then perhaps it goes into a building bridge section which drops out completely. That kind of information is really hard to put on a lyric chart. And it's stuff that musicians use all the time, super important. So if you can get into writing your charts in this kind of linear form, drawing your bar lines and writing your chords in, then it does make things a lot easier. What I will do afterwards is I'll just take a picture of this and I'll ask Kurt just to upload it for us so that if anyone's interested, it's available just to download, just to check out if you can read my handwriting, which is truly awful. All right. The last section that I like to do, or the last thing rather that I like to do when I'm learning a new song is to actually sit down with the bass and play the thing. Okay, so and this is the fun part. This is what we all enjoy. Is just sit down, play the song, and play through it. You don't have to get it 100% right the first time, but don't stop. Keep going. That's a little trick. Start playing the song. What it does is it familiarizes you with the key that you're playing in firstly. Okay, you get a feel for the key, you get a feel for the groove, what the drums are doing. It's very important to lock in with that as well. Use tools like multitracks, to figure out exactly what's played on the recording. If the drummer on a Sunday is not playing the groove exactly as it is, have that musical mindset to be able to just adapt what you're doing to fit in with what they're playing in the way that best serves the song, best serves the group, the band that are playing, and ultimately best serves the congregation, because that's really what it's about, is leading people into that space, where they're just comfortable, where they're able to really engage in worship, and also to not be a distraction. I'm sure we've all had the experience where you walk into church and the band are just very, very distracting because they're all over the place, unrehearsed. They haven't checked stuff out. I don't know, just personally, I find it very distracting. I find it very difficult to engage when the bass plays in a different key to the rest of the band. So yeah, just something to be aware of and mindful of. So get a feel for the key and the tempo when you're playing along, and just play through the first time. Don't stop and go, oh, I didn't get the verse perfect, and stop and don't do it little bit by little bit. Play through the song just once through to the end. It's important to get in your mind this idea that when you're playing music, performing live, time doesn't stop. When you're practicing at home and you don't get the intro perfect, you can just stop and go back. Okay, check it out again. But at this point, what we're trying to do is just develop that that thinking that the show must go on, the song must continue. It's this urgency that's really important to practice, because that stuff doesn't just come naturally at a gig or on a Sunday. That stuff that you really need to practice. There's 2 very good ways to do it. Firstly, play the song from beginning to end without stopping. Second thing to do is to play the song with a metronome only, so nothing else. So learn to play all the sections of the song with just the metronome. Okay. So what I do is I'll learn to play the intro, and this is really when you go into that macro level. So after you play it through once, maybe you got 3 notes in the whole song. That doesn't matter. It's important to have that mindset that the song will continue, and you practicing, if there's a mistake, if you make a mistake, or if there's a section that you're unfamiliar with, you're kind of training your brain to quickly think on the fly, think, how can I quickly fix this, or whatever it is, or it's just it just trains you to kind of keep up with the click track. Not all worship bands will use metronomes or click tracks live, but some do. Some even use backing tracks. And it's really important to practice everything that you do constantly, all the time, even if you're just playing scales, especially if you're playing scales. Practice with a metronome always, because it develops your own internal timekeeping, and so much music these days is played so strict metronome, strict grid, tempo kind of thing. That's a skill that you develop over time. It's not something that just comes naturally to people. Okay, so yeah, learn to play all the different sections with the metronome just by themselves. Just the intro, just the verse, just the chorus, blah, blah, blah. Okay, etc. If you're comfortable then, and you're totally happy with all of these things, you could play them all with a metronome. Then try play it in a different key, or even better, try play it at a few BPM slower, which really forces you to count. When you're playing it slowly, it's very easy just to drive the eighth notes and sounding really good. But when you got to really think about the length of each of those eighth notes, slow it down. If the song's at 90, take it right down to 60 and play through, the line that you're going to be playing in the chorus, for example, or the verse, play it through at 60. That's a really useful trick. And another cool trick to do is if the song's at 90 BPM, speed your metronome up to like 100, 110, 120. Try it fast at a different tempo, and it sort of forces the brain just to think differently about the song. And again, that sense of urgency. If you're super comfortable with it, can you do it at 120? I'm not saying it mustn't become like a little competition kind of thing, but it's just an important exercise, and it also trains the brain to kind of think fast and try and keep up, and just always remember that the song always goes on. The song doesn't stop. Music is this fluid thing. It's not verse, chorus, etc. And there's no little breaks in between. And as a bass player, it's even more important, because your job as a bass player is to set up the next section, and drive the band forward. So you can't be a little bit late on that change into the second verse. You have to be right on the second verse. It's really important. Okay. Another thing I'm just going to say is, so if you're comfortable with it, try it faster, try it slower, try different keys. Practice the difficult parts well in advance. Okay, it's probably the last thing I'm going to say is practice the parts that aren't so easy well in advance. If you're practicing them night before, I promise you it's too late. Okay, if you're practicing it on the day or the morning before, I'm sure we've all had those experiences in school where you're cramming for, an exam or something. That could be 50-50, really. You never know how that's going to go. Really try to practice the songs a few days before, so that you can slowly get them ingrained in your brain. Listen to them as much as possible. As I said, try and sing the song, try to sing the melody, and don't worry about the lyrics, but we're really looking at the melody, we're looking at the bass line, okay, as a bass player. But if the bass player can't play the drum groove, or the bass player has no idea what the drums are doing, that's a difficult position to put yourself in as a bass player. So, if you can familiarize yourself with as many aspects of the song, you're going to find yourself in a really good position. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thanks so much to Kurt and everyone at the Zeal movement. If you got any questions or anything, just comments, etc., please feel free to share them. And try writing out your charts by hand the old-fashioned way. It's a useful exercise, and it does really good things, in terms of just learning the song and the connection between the brain, the hands, and the brain, and the hands, and the instrument. Okay. Cool. Have a wonderful evening further on. Thank you very much for joining me, and good night.